You're listening to Accounted For, the Canadian podcast that explores the intangibles of every career. I'm your host, Daniel Lee. Hey everyone, welcome back to Accounted For. Happy Wednesday. Today's episode's a little late. I apologize for that. I will blame the snowy weather, although it has nothing to do with my abilities to pump out podcasts, but it causes delays in all kinds of ways, so podcast episodes are included in there. Today's episode is with Hans Arijanto. Hans is a product engineer at Angelist, and today's episode is different in structure than past episodes. I'm trying out a different segment called what I would like to coin Uncommon Sense. It's still a working title, so don't get riled up about it, but the idea behind that has been to test out a potentially new podcast I might think about starting, where I invite friends over or even past podcast guests that I've enjoyed talking to, and we just talk about things that might be challenging conventional wisdom, or just how certain cultures or certain places look at common sense differently, and it's kind of based on each individual guest's own perspective. And so that's something I've been thinking about, and so I thought this would be a pretty cool opportunity to have my friend Hans on, and we can splice up the episode where the first half is the traditional accounted for theme where we go through Hans's career, and the second half is kind of the uncommon sense where we talk about different kinds of elements that might be common sense for one person but not common sense for the other. And so the first half we kind of talk about Hans's journey as a product engineer, where he started out studying at the University of Waterloo, and then he went over to work at startups in Toronto, and then he went to Silicon Valley where he worked at Facebook and Athos, and then after that he went to the Amazon of Southeast Asia called Tokopedia, and then he came back to Toronto, but he works remotely with Angelist. And so we talk about his journey as well as his role as a product engineer. And in the second half, we talk about, I'd say, two kind of major topics, one being philosophy and the other being the differences between Canada/Western culture and that of Indonesia, where Hans is actually from. And so that's the kind of conversation that we will talk about in terms of what the values are like, and we have specific examples that Hans experienced, and also kind of the difference in working culture, even difference in salaries for engineers between North America and Indonesia. And yeah, so it's a different setup than normal, and I'm testing it to see whether I want to do a separate podcast series called Uncommon Sense, or maybe I'll just slide a couple of these more in throughout the year. We'll see. But without further ado, please enjoy my conversation with Hans. Hey everyone, welcome back to Accounted For. Today on the podcast, I have Hans Arijanto with me. Hey Hans, thanks for coming on the podcast.
Hey Dan, thanks for having me. It's my first podcast. I hope I don't fuck up.
That's a great start. So Hans here is a product and full stack engineer at Angelist. And so Hans, for people who are not familiar with Angelist, I can't imagine many people aren't, but if they aren't, how do you explain Angelist to people?
That's a good question. I've been in Angelist for a year. I should be able to answer this question really well. I don't think I will do it a lot of justice, but I guess long story short, Angelist is a place where you go to look for jobs. I mean, a lot of people probably look at it and think of it as just a job board, but it is more than that. But at least for the consumer eyes, it is just a job board. And that means people go on, there's listings of jobs that they apply for. But actually, Angelist is a lot more than that. You know, it's actually a whole recruiting platform. What I mean by that is, like, usually with a job board, the people who use it are just the people who want to apply for jobs, right? But in Angelist, you actually have people who apply for jobs, and you have the recruiters from the companies actually log onto the platform itself, and then they have a whole process and whole product that we won't talk about, basically. And then there's Product Hunt. We can get into that later. But Angelist basically, its product is taking any company that is at a startup level or even a funding level, and kind of becoming a tool that they can use to kind of take them to the next step. And that's in every step of the way. Like, people know it as recruiting, but it's not just that. It's for products, for recruiting, it's for funding.
Yeah, I think
Those are the three pillars.
Yeah, I think that's a good way of putting it. Like, I think when I first learned about it, I saw it as a way for people to angel invest in companies, and then it became, like, for me as a consumer or like just a retail person, it was like a job board where it's like an Indeed or LinkedIn for kind of startup companies.
Well, that was actually the start. I mean,
Okay.
Angelist started out, it's actually used to be called Venture Hacks.
Right.
And it was initially just for people to essentially get funding. But then what they found was like, hey, after they get funded, they need people. So that's what the, today known for Angelist is the recruiting platform.
Yeah. And I've had a few software developers, engineers on the podcast prior to, but
Okay.
your title is a product engineer.
Yeah, man.
What's the difference? Why is yours different?
So this is my first product engineering role as well. The way they described it was essentially a product engineer is an engineer who does product work as well. It's like you're basically still a full stack engineer, which means you're still responsible for all the engineering skills and all the engineering tasks that you have to do. But you need to be wary and have a product mind. And after doing this for a year, what I found is really what that means is that every engineer in the company, so actually every engineer in Angelist is a product engineer, so there's no like just base engineer. I mean, we have some infra engineers, but a lot of people who actually work on the platform is product engineering. And what that means is that whenever you create something or whenever you're developing something, you have to be able to answer the question and really think about like, well, why are you building this? Like, what is it for? And back it up with data. And this is great because then what it does is basically whenever you go into a meeting, wherever you want to talk about a certain product that you're building, everybody's kind of on the same page, or everybody has the same like North Star, because everybody thinks about the product, right? At the end of the day, you're building something for the consumer. So the only difference is really when you build something, you think about it in terms of, hey, why am I building this, and who am I building this for, and are the numbers backing this up? Instead of like, technically, is this good?
Oh,
Yeah.
so
that's never really a priority. It is a thing we consider, but it's never a priority.
So then would you say people who typically are like a software engineer or just a back-end engineer, they don't have a big product consideration? Do they just outsource that to the product managers? Is that how it normally works?
Maybe. I would say normally engineers don't think about that. That's not true. I would say like olden days engineers don't think about that. I mean, there's a lot of engineers who innately have product in their mindset already, like whenever they develop something. But in Angelist, it's a requirement. That's the only thing. As a product engineer, you're required to do that. Like it's definitely trumps over like technical debt or anything like that.
So then do you guys have product managers, or do you?
We do. We still have product managers, and I think they take care of the more holistic side of things. So they actually plan out the whole product roadmap, for example, and they set the baseline OKRs. But they're product managers, right? So it's almost like they're managing the product itself. But as product engineers, you're still very involved with them. You're involved with the product roadmaps that they make, and you have a say in it, for example. And that's the nice thing about it. And that's the main difference is that at any point in time, like let's just say, okay, I have a team and I have a product manager assigned to them, and you have like 3 product engineers, for example. So at the start of a quarter, they would like make a whole product roadmap, and they'd say, okay, listen, like we have a team or a company OKR, and our team OKR is this, right? But throughout that quarter, as a product engineer, you're invited to challenge those product roadmaps, and you're invited to like, do research and ask the questions of like, hey, are we building the right things? Should we be building something else? And that's always on the table, and that's always everyone's priority. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So a product manager sets the baseline and takes care of it across the board, but a product engineer is still very involved in that. With that being said, you're still an engineer, so you build everything, obviously, and that's kind of nice because you don't want to just build something that people tell you to build, right? You want to build something and you want to believe in it and you want to be able to challenge it, and that's what I like about this product engineering role. I guess you never asked me if I liked it, but that's what's nice about it is that you're building something that you have thoroughly challenged and believe in, and if you at any point you don't and you can prove it, you can always challenge it and say like, listen, I don't want to build this, I want to build something else because the numbers doesn't make sense. Yeah.
And so on this journey, so one of the reasons I'm a big fan of AngelList is because of one of the co-founders. I'm a big fan of Naval.
I've never met Naval. I wish
Yeah.
I have. That's one of the. It's because I'm remote. It kind of sucks, but I wish I met him.
Okay, yeah, because I was gonna say, have you ever met him before?
I have never met Naval. I have never met Naval, unfortunately, but I've heard good things.
Of course.
only good things. I don't know if that's true. I don't know if they're true. I can't confirm, but good things.
And so if we kind of like backtrack it, the way we met, we just know each other as like guys who play poker together. That's how kind of we first met each other.
Was that our first?
I think so. Yeah, we met at one of the cash games, and
that was our first time. Yeah, I remember. That wasn't too long ago.
No,
it was about 2 months ago.
Yeah. So
like I know everyone from Andy, man.
Thanks, Doan. Shout out to the man for connecting us.
I know.
But yeah, so we mainly only talk about poker, so I thought this was a good chance to also like learn about your background. And
Absolutely.
Before we actually started the interview, we talked about your background as being Indonesian and how that we were talking about your name construction. So before we go to that, I want to ask you: did you grow up in Jakarta?
I did. I was born in Jakarta. I was born and raised, and I stayed in Jakarta up until grade 4, and then I moved to Canada. There's a whole story as to why I moved, but our whole family basically moved to Canada from grade 4 up until half of grade 6, and then I have a twin. Me and my twin sister went back with my parents to Jakarta and stayed there for the rest of the high school years. And then I came back here. Yeah. A lot of back and forth, man. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, I immigrated here when I was grade 5, I think.
Oh yeah. Okay, it's about the same.
Yeah.
Same, timeline.
Yeah. But yeah, I'm always curious about different countries and geographies and people's cultures and stuff. Just because Toronto's like my fifth or sixth city that I've lived in.
Wait, what?
Yeah.
I thought it was just Hong Kong and here.
No. I was born in South Korea.
Oh right.
Yeah.
You're Korean.
Yeah.
Forget that sometimes.
Yeah, I don't really look it either.
I mean, a little bit. Oh, I don't know. Maybe it's biased now. I don't know, man.
Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, like I was born in Seoul, lived in Seoul. Then I went to Hong Kong, and then I went to Vancouver.
Okay.
And then.
Oh, city. Okay.
Yeah.
So you were whatever. So three countries.
3 countries.
Three
Yeah.
countries, okay.
All right, just fine. Lower my stats.
That's still a lot. That's still a lot. Okay. What's the 5th country? That's 4.
Oh,
Vancouver, Toronto, Hong Kong. Korea.
Calgary. I was in Calgary.
You were in Calgary.
Yeah,
oh, right.
Yeah.
Okay. Whatever, man. You were there for work. You were there for like, what, 2 years? Come on.
Wow.
Doesn't count. I mean, if you count all the cities, I got San Francisco, Jakarta.
Yeah.
We got, wait, is that it? Toronto. Yeah, that's it.
No, we'll talk more about that too.
Toronto, San Francisco, yeah.
But yeah, I want to get to the name thing. So why was that a unique story?
Why is my name a unique story?
Yeah, you said like there's like a whole story behind
right.
that.
Well, I don't know if there's a lot of Indonesians listening to this, so I guess it's not too sensitive a topic. But basically, Indonesians are mainly made of like local Indonesians and Chinese Indonesians. And a long time ago, obviously, like we Chinamen, we moved everywhere. Like, you know what I mean? We tried to like go to every single country, and Indonesia was one of them. And what ended up happening was, at some point, the Indonesian government was like, listen, if you want to stay here, and this happened during my parents' generation, like if you want to stay here, you got to get rid of your name, your Chinese name, and make your own name. Right? So then I guess like there's just a lot of Chinese Indonesians with like all these made up names, like my name, Arijanto, which a lot of people think is Arijanto or it's Mexican or whatever, because my dad just made it up.
Really?
Dad just made it up.
You just made up a last name?
Well, he had to make up his first and last name.
Oh.
Yeah, I mean, I think this happened a lot across the world, actually. I'm not sure exactly where, but I had friends who told me this happened to them as well in third world countries where you immigrated and they're like, listen, like if you want to fully immigrate, you gotta change your name. It was a law that was passed.
Wow.
Yeah, man. So Arijanto is completely made up.
It just sounded somewhat Indonesian for your dad. You're like, all right.
It sounds kind of Indonesian. It's like halfway. Yeah.
And
nice in between.
So then, growing up in Indonesia, like, was there like what do kids there like dream about, or what did you dream about as like a dream career?
What did kids dream about?
You know, so like when I ask people
I like that question.
So when I ask a lot of people who are born in Canada, they, you know, a lot of the guys, you know, not to be like sexist or anything, but from the sample size I've had, you know, they have dreams of being like firefighters or like hockey players.
Sure. Oh,
like that.
True. Yeah, no, never firefighters, never hockey players.
Yeah. So
I didn't even know what hockey was, dude.
Exactly. Like I didn't know either. So I'm curious, like, let me
for
think. You, like, yeah, when you're like age 7 or something.
Let me think about that. Well, I mean, obviously, living in an Asian household, the generic like what you should be was like actually no, my parents was I don't know what the word is for this, but they were very okay. They're very encouraging, a little too encouraging, a little too hopeful. So I mean, the things that they were saying was like, oh, become president, become astronaut, like, you know what I mean? But then also there was like the lower tier ones. I like, this is not actually lower tier, but to them they were like, oh, okay, you could also be a lawyer or a doctor, which is like, and maybe an engineer, which is what I am now. But like amongst the kids, I mean, if you're just asking me personally,
just you.
There was a point when I wanted to be a lawyer. I don't know why. I think it's because I liked talking to people. I obviously, like, I didn't know the workload associated with it. There was a point I wanted to be a lawyer. There was a point I wanted to maybe be a fireman. Actually, no, that's not true. No, that's not true. Just a lawyer. Lawyer, a chef, mainly because I was a little chubby when I was a kid. And I like food. So chef and lawyer, I think. But then with my friends, like, I don't know if there was, like, a consensus of what people wanted to be. Maybe a soccer player, because soccer is a big thing in Indonesia. Basketball is it. Yeah, and that's about it. I don't know, man. There was, like, I guess we never talked about it as a kid of what you wanted to be. I mean, honestly, what I wanted to be was those two, and one of my dreams, which is really weird, was I really wanted to own a Power Ranger a robot. Like, those were my dreams. Like, I was like, oh, I'm going to become an engineer. And I don't know if you ever watched this this cartoon. I don't remember what it's called, but it's this guy who has a car, but then the car turns to a robot, and the car's the head of the robot. It's like Max something, with like, and he had like a billiard ball. Okay, whatever. So like his setup was he has a car in his garage, and he would drive his car, and it was like this hot rod car with like flames on the side or whatever, right? And whenever he needs to fight monsters, because there's monsters in this world, he would just jump on his car in his garage, and the robot would emerge from the ground. And I had like 10 dreams over the course of 4 years when I was a kid where I had that exact same robot. And I would go to my garage, press a button, and then I would just walk around. And my robot, yeah. That's one of the dreams.
Are you getting close to building a robot?
I cannot disclose that right now, Dan. All right? Don't come into my... I don't actually own a garage right now. Yeah. I wish, dude. I wish.
And I also learned that... so you also went to Waterloo with Andy and...
Did I tell you how I met Andy?
No.
Did I tell you our story?
No.
It's very short.
Okay.
So,
what a great way to start a story. It's very short.
It's true. It's hilarious because, I mean, that's part of the reason why this whole situation is hilarious because, dude, I never thought I would see Andy ever again. Okay, so if my life was, my university life was a sitcom, Andy would be like the pilot's pilot episode. As in, like, I met him in Frosh Week, okay?
Oh, right.
I met him in the first week of Frosh Week, and we had this huge group of friends, and he was dating this girl that was in that huge group of friends. And I met him for, like, 4 days, and then I never saw him again. That's not true, actually. So I met him, I almost said I dated him. I met him for 4 days, like, legitimately Frosh Week, and then they broke up or something, I'm not sure. And then he disappeared, right? But, I mean, he lived in Impression, so I'm like, I remember Andy Doan. And I think it's like in second year or third year, I was walking in UW Plaza, and I saw this, like, lengthy dude, like, finger-tutting as he was walking home. And I'm like, who the fuck is finger-tutting in UW Plaza? And lo and behold, it was Andy Doan. I didn't say hi. He didn't say hi either. He had headphones on or something. He was just finger-tutting, like... Or making Naruto signs, I don't know, man. And he was like walking home, and then fast forward like 6 years, and I see him, and he lives in my building, you know.
Yeah,
or I live in his building because he moved here first, and now we're poker friends.
Yeah, no, it's a small world.
We're actual friends.
Yeah.
But who play a lot of poker.
Yeah. That sums up our friendship.
Yeah. I mean, hey, come on, man. It's okay. You know, when you grow up, that's one of the things, right? Like, I feel like a lot of people, I guess a lot of people in their mid-20s, like, they make that transition where, like, you know how in university you have, like, a lot of friends? And you kind of have, like, these, like, solid groups of friends. And I'm sure some people do, too, as well, or still. But then, of course, people move and everything, and you have your own job and whatever. And then the pockets of friends that you kind of making later on in life, it's associated with an activity. Like, you know what I mean? Because, like, your schedule gets really packed and stuff like that, so you don't really have, like, a one-for-all unless you've kept it from, like, high school or whatever. It's kind of pockets of activities, and that's fine. A lot of people, like, I had conversations with people who went through, it's not midlife, it was an early life crisis?
Quarter life crisis?
Quarter. Assuming you live to 100?
Yeah,
that's hopeful, dude. I don't know. Call it, like, 3/5 tenths life crisis, whatever. Where people think like, oh, that's fake. They're like, oh, like I only see this guy or I only see these people when I like go fishing. I'm like, well, that's fine. Like, you know what I mean? Obviously, friendships are harder to foster as you like grow older. You know, it's harder to find people, especially genuine people. But it's fine. You know, activities, friendships based on activities is kind of just what happens after a certain time.
Yeah, it's weird. Like, so Andy and I, we know each other from breakdancing. That's why I first met.
Dude, wait, I didn't know you danced.
I did, yeah.
What the heck? Show me some moves, man.
Well, I've kind of gotten old now.
Show me some moves. Whatever, man. You go to the gym.
Yeah,
You're healthy.
But no, well, I stopped breakdancing because I wanted to focus on powerlifting instead because I ended up getting injured too often.
Isn't that a huge transition?
Well, so
should it be like small and nimble
for
to breakdance?
Oh, to breakdance, yeah. So my repertoire was very limited to like freezes and like a lot of footwork.
Oh, yeah. A lot of muscle use. Huh?
Yeah, exactly. But then
it's like, is Dan dancing? Nah, he's freezing. Let him be. He's got this for 10 minutes. It's impressive, I guess.
Yeah, doing stuff like handstand push-ups, that kind of stuff.
Okay, are you dancing or are you just showing off?
Yeah,
like, what the fuck?
Exactly.
This man's like just doing handstand push-ups.
But and then like we didn't see each other for a long time until like I saw him in my consulting building. Like I was at Deloitte and I saw him in our lobby, working with like my other colleagues. And I was like, dude, why are you here?
That was not Calgary? That was
this was in Toronto.
That was in Toronto.
Yeah.
That was like 4 years ago or something.
Something like that. 4 years ago. Yeah.
And you guys stayed close ever since, or what?
Yeah. We just became like a group of friends that we just hung out with, and that's actually how I know Eric.
So it was So Eric was part of that Deloitte group.
Yeah. So I met Eric at Deloitte. Yeah.
So Andy's just kind of the glue that kind of brought us together. Is that the consensus?
Kind of, yeah. That's kind of the point of the story.
I guess.
But kind of going back to you though. So we never met in Waterloo, but we were there during the same time.
I'm pretty sure we walked across each other or something.
Never realized.
Yeah, absolutely.
Felt some energy there.
Yeah, might be one-sided there. It's all good.
Oh damn. And so when I looked at your kind of career journey since, so you graduated from engineering in Waterloo, and I noticed that you worked at Loose Button.
Oh wait, you dig deep. Okay, LinkedIn.
Yeah.
Loose Button. Oh my god, that shit brings me back. Loose Button.
So that caught my eye because I had another podcast guest who worked at Loose Button.
Oh, is it Peter Sum?
Yeah, so you know Peter?
Holy shit, you know Peter?
So Peter and I went to the same high school.
Yo, that's fucking hilarious. You know Peter?
Yeah.
Yeah, dude, Peter was so Peter worked at Loose Button before me, and I actually didn't work with him, but I ended up working at Yukon Games with him.
Right.
Yeah, and obviously I was like a kid, dude, and Peter was also a kid, but he was slightly older. So I'm pretty sure I said a lot of dumb shit to him. But I know Peter, yeah.
Damn, small world.
Peter Sum.
Yeah.
You're friends with him. That's hilarious. Oh, you know him.
Yeah, I know him.
He's your acquaintance.
Yeah, so he came on the podcast.
That's right,
and
Peter.
then
I'm a friend of Dan. You're an acquaintance. I'm just kidding, man.
But yeah, I saw that and I was like, wow, small world. And then after that, you went to the Valley. You worked at Facebook. You worked at Athos, and then you went back to Jakarta and. How do you pronounce this? Tokopedia?
Tokopedia, yeah. Tokopedia is basically Indonesia's, Southeast, soon to be Southeast. I mean, that's presumptuous. I'm a little biased, but soon to be Southeast Asia's like Amazon.
Yeah, it's massive.
That's the point, because Alibaba invested in them.
Yeah.
Right. So that's the point, is that they want to make it into Amazon. But the only difference is like they're more. They're doubling down on like authenticity of like stores, like people owning the stores inside the platform. If that makes sense. Like, you know how like Amazon is basically a giant warehouse. Right. That's what Amazon is. Like, it's all under the Amazon brand, right? But in Tokopedia, the whole idea initially was like allowing these people who don't have access to internet or don't necessarily who don't necessarily know too much about technology or have access to the means to open stores to be able to open online stores. So they allow a lot more brand identity, I guess, and they promote them more, or like it feels like you're visiting individual stores as opposed to a giant warehouse. If that makes sense, right? But then they're of course trying to reach that Amazon level where they're not just going to become like stores. It's going to like empower, with technologies in the cloud and stuff like that. Man, they're backed by Alibaba, which is it's Alibaba, man.
Mm-hmm. But then so after usually when you hit Facebook, most people want to stay at
Yeah.
Facebook. So
Yeah.
what instigated the departure to Athos and then after going back to Jakarta?
Yeah, I mean, I guess if you take a look at my career journey, like 90% of it is startups. Like, you know, like I've always liked working in smaller teams. And don't get me wrong, I mean, obviously, so I did like Lose Button, and then I did Massive Damage, the Yukon Games, and then I did Facebook. So those initial 3 were like teams of, minus Yukon Games, was like teams of like 10 people, like literally 10 people. And I kind of really enjoyed that environment. And also as you were younger, I'm making it sound like I'm super old. I'm not that old, but you know, you had a lot more energy. So, you know, you like working long hours. At least I did. I like working long hours. I like really getting to know my coworkers. I like burning the midnight oil with them, and really putting in a lot of work. And that's not really the culture you get in bigger companies, right? And of course, when Facebook came calling, I was like, I don't know, I'm gonna try. I don't care. Like, it's Facebook. Like, you know what I mean? First of all, I was very lucky to get my position at Facebook. I think it was very lucky.
How so?
We can get into that later.
All right.
But I mean, everyone comes in with some sense of luck, I guess, especially if you're in university still. Don't get me wrong. There's some geniuses out there. I don't think I was a genius. But what was I saying again? I forgot.
Startups.
Yeah. So anyway, yeah. So after trying Facebook, I got a sense of the culture of what it was like not in a startup. And then, you know, around that time, startups were also getting massively funded. I mean, the only thing that was keeping you in Facebook was like, oh, you get paid a lot, right? You know what I mean? Like, Facebook does compensate you quite a bit. But then I went to Athos, which was like this VC-backed startup who was going to pay me the same amount, basically. But then I got that vibe and that feel. So then I went for it.
And so you were in Silicon Valley, like most people.
Stay in Silicon Valley?
They stay, right?
This is another...
Or everyone congregates to it, right?
Yeah,
if you're an engineer.
Yeah, dude. It's...
But you went back to the island.
Yeah, I went back to the motherland. Can I call it... Is that just Russia, or can you call it the motherland?
Call it the motherland. Yeah.
The fatherland.
I think
not sexy.
Germany is fatherland.
Is it?
Yeah, I think so.
Is that how it is?
Does that
mean Russia and Germany are together? Their parents?
Well, they had the whole...
Who's their child?
The fascism and socialist or communist
who's their
battle.
Communist child?
Communist fascist child?
Yeah, who's their communist fascist child? Is it North Korea? Oh my god! This makes sense. Okay, no, it doesn't make any sense. Yeah, so there were a couple of reasons, actually. One of the reasons was I was not a Canadian citizen. So I was in the States under J1 visa, which is like a student visa. I don't want to get into the whole visa situation. Basically, I had a visa issue. And I could have renewed my J1 visa, but like at that point in time, I remember what ended up happening was I had worked at Athos and had graduated for about a year-ish. A year and a little bit more. And my sister got married. So when my sister got married, obviously, you know, I went to the wedding. It was in Bali. It was beautiful. I came home.
Oh, right. I remember. So Bali is actually in your country.
Bali is in my country. Yeah, a lot of it's so one of the most. I don't mean this to be like angry. One of the most ignorant things that always happens is like people will ask me like, "Oh, where are you from?" And I'm like, "Oh, I'm from Indonesia." And they're like, "What? Where?" And I'm just like, "Oh, you know, the Bali." And they'd be like, "Oh, like yeah, Bali." I'm like, "Dude, come on, man. You don't know the country? Like, come on."
It's a massive country.
Yeah, well, it's not big. It's a lot of islands.
Well, there's a lot of people too.
Yes,
the population is massive.
There's a lot of people. It's condensed, right? Yeah. Like the land itself, it's not that big. I mean, it's bigger. Right. Yeah, but there's a lot of islands. So anyway, my sister had a wedding in Bali, and then I went, right? And I went and had a great time. Saw my family, you know, saw my sisters, my parents, some of my old friends. And I don't know, dude, like, it was a combination of, like, okay, like, I'm growing a little bit older, I'm recognizing the value of, like, family, and, you know, I haven't seen them in, like, well, I really haven't seen them or lived with them in, like, 4 to 5 years. Actually, it was 5.5 years at that point in time, I think. And then aside from that, my parents also have a business back home, obviously. It's very generic, like, third world boy who comes to, you know, comes to school in an international place. Their parents have a business, and, you know, even more to that stigma, I was the only boy, because I had 3 sisters. One twin, 2 older sisters. And they were always prepping me, or they were always saying like, oh, you need to come back and like take over this company. You need to come back and give this a try, right? And at that point in time, it was a combination of that and a combination of like me missing my parents or like me missing my family or not missing them. I wanted more relationships with them, I guess. So I was like, okay, you know what? My visa is expiring. Literally what I told myself was like, so H-1B was another visa you could take or you can get, which is like a better version of J-1, but it was a lottery. Like it just depends on luck. So I was like, okay, my visa's expiring soon. They're applying for H-1B. If I get it, I'm going to stay. If I don't get it, I'm going to go home. And I'm not a planner. I'm like, I go with the flow. And that's just my reason for, that's like, just because I'm lazy. That's like, I say I go with the flow, but really I'm just lazy. So I just made that pact to myself. I was like, yeah, I'm just going to do whatever destiny like gives me, right? And then I didn't get the visa. So I was like, all right, I'm going home. Yeah, it's actually crazy. So I went home. I didn't tell my parents. I told my sisters. And what I did was I told my sisters to take my parents out to this dinner place. And I was sitting right next to them. And I was wearing like a hat. And the whole time I was just ordering dinner and like eating by myself. And my parents were going nuts, like on our WhatsApp group. We're like, oh my God, there's this guy who looks like you. Like, what the fuck? Like, oh my God, he looks exactly like you. And then they were doing that for like an hour. And then I finally told them, and they were really happy. It's really good. That was a good surprise. Yeah. That was like one of the things that I remember most about moving back. Obviously, with everything else that I did, Tokopedia, and I opened a board game cafe too.
You did?
Wait, I didn't tell you that?
No.
Oh yeah, I opened a board game cafe.
All right, tell me about that.
So, because the whole point of me going back home was to see my parents and my family, but also to take over the business, right? That's the idea.
Okay, so what? So okay,
what business?
So what business? So in my mind,
here.
I was thinking, are your parents one of the co-founders of Tokopedia?
No, oh my God, man! If my parents were one of the co-founders of Tokopedia, they will not let me leave. I mean, I wouldn't want to leave either. Like at that point, like I think the product itself is like enough for me to like. I mean, that's not true. I don't know if I would want to leave. But that's way bigger. Let's not get into that.
Yeah.
It's like if you're like, if your parents own, like, I don't know, Amazon, I guess.
Yeah. When you were Bezos' kid.
Well, you know what? I'd like to think that Bezos would be like, do whatever the fuck you want.
Yeah.
I feel like he would do that.
Totally.
Yeah. I feel like he would totally be like, nah, do what you want.
Well, he's doing whatever the fuck he wants
right
now
exactly.
anyways.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I think, never mind. That's not a good comparison then.
So then let's go back to the board game cafe.
No, well, okay, do you want to know what my parents do? Or
yeah,
do you want
show me the connection.
The connection, okay. Well, there's no connection. That's the connection.
Okay.
But I can tell you how I came to make a board game cafe. So my parents buy and sell cables. And whenever I say that, people always think like cable as in like television, right? But that's not true. Yeah, it's actual cables. So fiber optic, copper cables. Like the main cables that people use are like copper, aluminum, or fiber optic, right? Fiber optic is becoming big, and what they do is basically they bring in international brands, and there's a big four brand locally in Indonesia as well that's very well known, and they are distributors, right? They're not manufacturers, they're distributors, but they hold distributing licenses for international brands that only they hold, for example. And what they do is they go pitch and they go to like companies or like people who want to build like, I don't know, hotels or whatever it is, and they pitch whatever cables that they have that they need. So that's what they do basically. So I did that obviously when I first came back for about 6 months, and I really didn't like it. It's unfortunate.
Were you an engineer or were you?
I was not an engineer. Well, the thing is like I guess because they're distributors, they were like 80% sales. Like, don't get me wrong. They have support engineers for installation, but they're installation engineers. Like, you know what I mean? Like, they don't work on the product itself.
Yeah, it's not a SaaS company.
Yeah, it's not. And I think what I really found there, or at least the value that I got from going back and actually, working with my parents was I knew that Asia was not the working culture that I had come to love and appreciate. And at the same time, I knew that I really needed to work with product. Like, I knew that although I'm a people person and I like talking to people, I don't want to do that for my job. Like, my job, I want to be involved in product. That's where I feel effective. That's where I feel motivated. And I really came to light in those 6 months that I worked with them where, like, it's primarily lobbying, You go out, you meet people, you take them to lunch, you tell them about your product, and you don't really have a full, deep, rich understanding of your product, but you know it at a surface level enough to like give a pitch. That's the point, right? And I didn't even realize at the point, like I didn't know that I was working on product for the past, like 3 years of my career, but I was, and that came into light when I wasn't working on product. So I mean, I don't take it as a loss. It was like, oh great, like I know what I like now, or like at least I know what I really don't like, so then I can like focus on what it is that I want. So fast forward, actually, I kind of figured that out 3 months in out of the 6 months that I was there. So 3 months in, I was like, okay, I don't want to do this. Of course, it's going to take time to ease my parents out of this. What can I do in between, right? So as I mentioned, I worked in massive damage and Yukon games. And the thing that's common about these two is that they're mobile games. That's actually why I got into engineering or programming in the first place, was because I loved games as a kid. My dream was like to make like a Mega Man game. I don't know why people like. I guess like Mega Man is generic, or like it was just like one of the games I enjoyed the most as a kid. So I was like, okay, I could either make like I have time now. I can focus on things that I'm passionate about, which is like tech and games, right? I can either do both. Right? But I knew that it would take too much time. I knew that I didn't have the resources available. I didn't have the skills of like artists, for example, that I would need to effectively do this in a short amount of time, or like in the near future. So I was like, okay, well, what else can I do, right? And I don't know, I guess this actually happened on a date. So one of the things you do is like, okay, when you're like unhappy with your job, and then you're like, okay, I don't know exactly what I want to do yet. What do? You focus on your love life, right? Like, I don't know. I guess that's what I did. So I went on a lot of dates. And one of the dates I went on, she lived a little bit outside of Jakarta, right? So I went to her place and we were hanging out. And we were thinking about like, oh, what can we do? Like, what should we do on this date? And she's like, oh, I know this cafe. Like, let's go here. It's called The Bunker. I still remember. I was like, oh, The Bunker. Cool. So I took her. We went. And The Bunker turned out to be a board game cafe. And I remember thinking like, oh, cool. I didn't know this was here. Like, I didn't know this could exist here. Because obviously, like, board game cafes was popping, and in the like, I don't know, early 2000s, or like they started becoming popular. It started 2010, probably, like around 2010. And even here in Toronto, Snakes and Lattes is very well known, stuff like that, Castle and all that stuff. So obviously that was like one of the things I had already considered, but I was like, that's not going to work in Jakarta for a lot of reasons. One is like people are too lazy. Some people don't want to learn how to play games. It might be too complicated for them. Also, like, you can't pay as much, obviously, like monetarily, like it doesn't make sense. Like here, it costs way too much, but in Jakarta, that would just not make sense, that amount of money. But lo and behold, I went to The Bunker and it was crowded. Like, I was like, wow, there's a lot of people here. And the place was huge. Like, it was 2 floors. It was huge. They had so many games, and I was like, well, if they can do it, like, this must mean that it's possible, right? Like, you know what I mean? Like, I mean, at the point, I was just cynical. I was just like, no, it's not going to work. Fuck it. I'm not going to think about it. So I went home after the date. Didn't work out. I saw her for like another 2 times, but it didn't work out. But she left me with a great idea. So thank you, Michelle. Thank you. Wherever you are. She's not going to listen to this podcast. No way.
Of course she will.
No,
I have an international audience.
Oh, sure. That would be the day she listens to this podcast is when you've made it, Dan. 100%. If she listens to this podcast, hello world, Dan has made it. So anyway, I went home and I crunched the numbers. I was like, okay, well, if I charge this much and I brought in this many board games, how long would it take? How much does it cost to rent? And then it just made sense. You know what I mean? I was like, oh, listen, like, worst case scenario, I'll be in the green. Best case scenario, I'll make money. Like, this is good. This works. And I like it. I'm passionate about it. So yeah, what I did for the next month was I just kept going to The Bunker, played so many games, asked them to teach me, and then I like did my own research, and then I found out like who I could buy board games from, and then I just bought a board game, rented a place, renovated it, did a little bit of interior design. I'm not good, but it was cheap. And yeah, Coop Board Game Cafe popped up after 3 or 4 months of work. Yeah,
3 to 4 months to
set
all that up.
3 or 4 months of work. I mean, dude, that's the thing, right? That's like I really hate long drawn out projects. It's because I think the more drawn out it is, the more my motivation gets sapped away. So if I can't see the end goal, and I'm not saying that's a good thing, this is definitely one of my weaknesses, then I become unmotivated. So I knew exactly how long Coop needed to take in order for it to be successful. Oh, I also got a partner. That helped. I got a partner who was in the cafe business, so he had connections to like coffee machines and baristas, and he also had some construction knowledge, so he had access to like construction workers. So I could work with him. I was mainly the board game guy and the designer guy of like how this is gonna look. And then we just rented a place. We rented it for 2 years. It was close to my house. We found a place that was like one close to my house and also like a very busy street. Close to my house, obviously, because like I can go there every day. And dude, and we just did it. Just pulled the trigger. Took the money I had. I self-funded it. It wasn't finance or anything like that. Took the money I got from Silicon Valley, just poured it into this. I was 70%, he's 30%. And it was running in 6 months. And then after 6 months of running, which is a year now, I've been in Jakarta, it was self-sufficient. Like we got a manager and everything was running by itself. So I was like, okay, well, I'm done with this now. What do I want to do now? Like, you know what I mean? That was basically my mindset. And then I was like, okay, well, I can go back to Canada, but do I want to do that? And I think at the time, Coop was just getting okay. So I was like, okay, well, I should stay here. And also, I'm still here with my parents, obviously, and stuff like that. So I was like, okay, well, let's look for the best tech company in Jakarta that I can join, right? So the ones that popped up, you might not know them, but they're Traveloka, Gojek, and Tokopedia. So Gojek is like Uber. Traveloka is basically Google Flights, Hotels.com. Yeah, it's like Hotels.com. And then Tokopedia is like Amazon. Mm-hmm. So those are the three.
Yeah, I know Gojek.
You know Gojek? Okay. Yeah. So those are the three, basically. And I interviewed all three, and I decided to go with Tokopedia because they just seemed like they seemed like they were at the cusp of massive growth. That's why I joined them. I joined their iOS team. I was there for a year, and then I don't even know how this happened, but I was like, I guess after a year, I was like, okay, it's like if I really want to move back into tech, I should get out of here. I should go back. Like that was my mindset. I was like,
what brought on that mindset? You're at the company to be in Southeast Asia.
Well, I mean, a couple of reasons. One of it is pay, obviously. Like I get paid a lot more here, right? And at the same time, it's like they are leading in Southeast Asia. I don't think they're leading in the world, right? And I also wanted access to more talented engineers. I mean, I'm just being honest. I mean, not to say that they don't have talented engineers. At least in my team, I firmly believe that like there are people who are even better out here, and I want to learn from them. So, and aside from that, it was at that point, it was like, this is like literally the deadline if I want to save my Canadian citizenship, which is why I'm here, and I can't leave. Don't tell anyone. It's actually fine. I'm not breaking the rules, but I just literally can't leave, which sucks. But in a year and a half, I can go. I'll take you to Indonesia. It'll be good.
All right.
It'll be fun. But yeah, dude. And then I decided I was gonna move back to Canada, right? Or I wanted to figure out how I could move back to the States, and I figured out there's no way. The only way you can do it is if you pay $1 million to get. Apparently, there's a way to pay $1 million to get a green card or something. And I'm like, okay, well, no one's gonna sponsor me for that. Like, I'm not worth $1 million, like, to like move there. Just like, so I was like, okay, well, I gotta look for remote work. And then my friend who worked at Angelist, who I stayed connected to, he was just like, listen, dude, we're hiring. You get paid a lot, and people here are sick. And I'm like, all right, sure, let's do an interview. And initially, he was like, we accept remote engineers. This is what I'm telling you. I don't plan things then. I don't know if this is good. I'm pretty sure it's bad, but it works for me. So he was like, we're hiring remote engineers. They will let you work from Jakarta. I was like, fuck, that's so sick. I'm going to get paid USD. I can still work on my cafe. And I stay in Jakarta, and I get paid USD. Like, come on. Like, that's a sweet deal, right? You know what I mean? So I did the interview process, whatever, and I got hired. Right? They were like, okay, great. I was talking to one of the managers. His name is Koppel. He's a great guy. And he was like, okay, great. Like, we're going to hire you, stuff like that. We're just going to work out the comp and everything, exactly how much, but you're going to work from Indonesia. Yeah, it's all good, right? I was like, okay, cool. And he's like, we're going to get back to you in 2 days. I'm like, cool. 2 days passes by. Nothing. And he's like, sorry, we got to like confirm some things. We're going to get back to you in another 2 days. I'm like, all right, cool. 2 days passes by. Still nothing. And he's like, okay, actually our CEO wants to talk to you. So I'm like, okay, cool, let's go talk. So and then I met Amit, which is our CEO for Angelist Talent, and he was like, good, hey dude, like everything's cool, like I heard everything, like awesome, we wanted you to join the team. I'll be honest with you, you can't work from Jakarta. I was like, dude, what do you mean? You told me, like, literally the start of all of this was like I can work from Jakarta. And he's like, I know they said all that, I'm sorry they promised that. And he's like, I just don't think it's gonna work. Like, you're young, you want to have a life. If you work from Jakarta, you're literally going to like be sleeping throughout the day. And I was like, I will do it. I don't care. And Amit's like, I don't think it's gonna work. You have to like, would you consider moving to Canada? And I was like, I don't know, man. I don't know. And legitimately, I was like, okay, let me think about it. I don't know. And he's like, yeah, okay. Offer stands. If you move to Canada, we're good to go. You can work remotely. I was like, okay, cool. So he hung up the phone, and obviously, like, what do people do normally when in this type of situation? They would like, I don't know, do like pros and cons list and like think about this for like a week or whatever. He hung up the phone. I thought about it for like 2 minutes, and I was like, fuck it, I'm moving to Canada. I was like, fuck it. I just sent it over you. I was like, I'll do it. Hey, dude. You gotta pull the trigger sometimes, all right? You gotta do what feels right. I don't know. At the moment it felt right. I don't regret it now.
Damn.
I also had a girlfriend at the time.
Oh, damn.
She was horrible. I'm glad. I hope she doesn't listen to this podcast. She's Korean. It's my first time dating a Korean girl. Not saying I don't want to be stereotypical here, but she was insane, man. She was crazy. And I'm horrible at breaking up with people. Like, really bad. It literally took me moving to a different country and not be able to move back for 2 years to break up with this girl. And it was like me being like, oh, it's 2 years. I don't know. What do you think? And she's like, oh, it's probably not good. I'm like, all right, if that's what you think.
Not bad. That's like the stereotype of guys on how they break up.
I'm bad. I'm sorry.
Oh, shit.
I'm honest here. At least I'm honest.
No,
right?
yeah, that's awesome.
At least
we appreciate that.
Yeah.
Yeah, before we did the interview, we talked about how, like,
Did I not ever tell you about any of this?
No.
Have you ever? We had I guess we only had like one sit-down talk.
Yeah.
It was mostly about career.
Yeah,
it was mostly about like,
It was mostly about like me too, so that's why I felt like I want to learn more about you.
Yeah, Dan, stop talking about yourself.
Yeah, my story is not that interesting.
No, that's not true. You got 5 cities.
Thanks, man. Wow.
White sports, you missed out on that.
But so that's crazy though that you just made all these snap judgments and everything just like
dude,
happened.
I don't know how to.
Is that the luck part you talked about with like Facebook too?
Yeah, honestly, I mean that's I'm sure that plays a part into it. That's not exactly what I was talking about. But I guess that's like just how I've lived my life, and I'm not like, again, I'm saying I don't think it's correct or the most optimum. That's actually the most. I think that's the right way to say it. It's not the most optimum. I don't think it's right or it's wrong. But hey, it's worked for me. I'm just not a planner. Like, I get if I think about something too much, I tend to overthink, and then I just like my head just gets bloated, and then like I just can't make a decision. So what I end up doing is just making snap calls, and you just kind of live with the results. Like, you know what I mean? I think it's okay as long as you don't have regret. I mean, I don't regret it so far.
So what happened to Coop?
It's still running.
It's still running.
Oh yeah, I didn't tell. Yeah, it's still running, dude. So again, snap call. I was like, I'm moving to Canada. Of course, one of the things I had to do was figure out what I'm gonna do with Coop, right? So I just called up my partner. I'm like, listen, dude, I'm moving to Canada. He's like, what the fuck? And I'm like, yeah, I'm moving to Canada. I'm gonna give you 20%, and you're gonna keep it running. What do you think? And he's like, yeah, that sounds good. I'm like, all right. That's legit. So now it's 50-50. He runs it, and I just chill.
And you just get a payment.
Yeah, so we decided not to do dividends. So what we do is we just kind of keep it in our bank account, and then we just kind of put in like an investment vehicle or something, and then we're going to pull it out once we're done. It's profitable, so we might just keep it running. Obviously, like, it's not a lot of work for him to keep it running, because he just needs to he needs to like rehire some people and stuff like that. So obviously, if it continues to become profitable, I think we're just gonna keep it running. So we just extended again for another 2 years at the place, and we'll revisit that in 2 years, right?
Wow.
So, yeah.
Look at that passive income going on.
Hashtag passive income. Unfortunately, it's Indonesian rupiah and not dollars. So it's just
Yeah. So what's the kind of engineer pay difference between someone in North America versus like here,
like
versus Jakarta?
Like, okay, there's different. So obviously, Canadian and U.S. gets paid differently as well.
Right.
So are you asking like Indonesian to U.S. but the same level? Let me think about that. It's like 5x and above. Yeah, dude. That's why I had to consider. Like, listen, I'm not like always like, oh, like I need all the cash. Like, if it's like a 5% increase or 10% increase, I'm like, whatever, I don't give a fuck, right? But if it's a 5x, like, you know what I mean?
Wow.
At that point, I'm like, okay, I gotta leave. Like, and the thing is like, I was so honest with them. I went to Tokopedia and I'm like, listen, I like you guys, but like, I want to be honest with you. I'm getting an offer that it's like 5-6x of whatever I'm getting paid right now, and they're just like, yeah, there's nothing we can do about that. And I'm like, fair. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's not their fault. It's just the economy hasn't caught up to that point yet.
Yeah, just market economics.
And at some point, I mean, obviously engineers in the States, I think, are actually, I'm not gonna say that. Never mind. I'm not gonna finish that sentence.
Oh, come on, man! Just like leaving me.
I'm not gonna finish that sentence right there. It's a conflict of interest.
All right, fine. We'll do that off here. And this kind of brings up to this segment that I've been wanting to try out, where
sure, common sense.
Yeah, or I want to call it uncommon sense.
Uncommon common sense.
Exactly.
Uncommon sense.
Exactly.
I like that. Are you gonna coin that?
I want to.
Is uncommon sense not a thing?
Well, no,
I like that.
It is. I think it's.
Is it in Urban Dictionary?
Ooh, I don't know.
If it's not, you can if it's not in Urban Dictionary, dude, I'm pretty sure it's not a thing, and you can coin it.
You think so?
This is gonna be your breadwinner right here. This is the golden goose you have been waiting for.
Oh yeah. Oh no, they have it. Urban Dictionary has it.
Oh damn it, Dan! So close.
Well, I heard it from other investors talking about it. So
that's not a thing then. What do you mean? I mean, it is a thing. Sorry, you didn't make it up there.
No, I didn't make it up. No.
I'm sorry, I screamed into that. I'm sorry, everyone.
It's alright. I'll adjust the volume.
Oh, okay, good.
But so one thing I'm curious about. So there's a couple things actually, kind of tailored to around Indonesia. So one thing I noticed when I was an investor, I was looking in Southeast Asian countries and the social media messaging apps people use, and Indonesia has a very large population that uses BBM.
Yes.
Why is that? They're the only country that uses BBM.
I'm sure there's an actual geographical and scientific explanation to this, but from a perspective of one of the kids who was part of the hype, it was just cool. Like, straight up, no one used iPhones. Like, there was something very satisfying and very cool about the BBM keyboard, obviously.
Even now.
Yeah, like, and now it's because of loyalty. Like, don't get me wrong, like of course it's gone down. Like, a lot more people use iPhones and stuff like that. And I think a part of it is, one is access. Like, we just didn't have access to iPhones, dude. Like, Apple stores are not a thing in Indonesia. Like, if you wanted to get an iPhone, like okay, first of all, like, you have to understand, I don't know what it was like to get, like, you know how you get phones from Apple, or you get phones from like Rogers and whatever, of all these like really well-known brands, and they're everywhere. In Indonesia, you get phones by going to like the Pacific Mall of Toronto, and there's like 200 million, million stores, and they all sell like phones from God knows where. Like, you know what I mean? That's how you got phones back then. It's legit.
Wow.
There's no legit store. Like, you know what I mean? So, I mean, I don't know why they didn't have iPhones, or maybe iPhones just didn't penetrate the market enough. But BBMs was everywhere. Like, that BlackBerries was the thing. One, it was cool, and two, we had access to it. So everybody kind of adopted it, and I think because of that, everyone also fell in love with the keyboard, because people love messaging, like, you know what I mean? And up to this point, I firmly believe that the reason why BBM is still prevalent there is because of loyalty. like brand loyalty. They're just used to it. I mean, all the old people kind of adopted it because the kids did, and then the old people aren't going to change. Like, you know what I mean? They're not going to use iPhones. And the kids nowadays, of course, they use iPhones. And there's more access to it now. Like, you know what I mean? But back then, that's why.
And so, after, you know, you've lived in Jakarta, you've lived in Silicon Valley, you've lived in Toronto. And so
Sorry, give me my 3 cities.
Yeah, exactly. But when you came back to Toronto after your time at Tokopedia, like, what are things that you kind of noticed here where you thought, were there things at all where you noticed like,
wow,
snow, this
dude.
is so
freaking snow? That's the first thing I recognized.
What about like different kind of cultural nuances or like infrastructure?
Absolutely. Are you kidding me? It's funny because I kind of went full circle. What I mean by that is I lived in Jakarta, but that was the first culture I knew, right? So I didn't really know of other cultures, and for me that was just normal. What I mean by cultures, I meant like, you know what people value, how they think, just what, yeah. I think that's the main thing. Is like what people value and how they think and how they act on a day-to-day basis, like the things that they do on like days off, things they do when they actually work and stuff like that. And I didn't really get a lot of that, or I did, and I thought it was so normal before I moved to Canada for the first time because I was young, right? And it's safe to say that like you develop a lot of your, not all of them, but a lot of your adult characteristics in university. And I was in university like in Canada for all my university years. So obviously I was adopting this new culture, right? And it was a lot easier because I was in that state of change. Because I was like, I wanted to, or like I was, figuring out who I was, or I don't know, something cliche. And I adopted Canada with open arms, right? Like the cultures of Canada or the cultures of like a first world country and stuff like that. And then when I came back to Indonesia, that was a culture shock. And it's weird because like for me, the initial jump to Canada wasn't that much of a culture shock because I didn't really have set values yet. And I was also open-minded. I was like a happy kid. So it was like, I was just like, okay, this is how people are in university. It wasn't like, oh, this is how people are in university here as opposed to people who are in university in Jakarta. Whereas like when I was in my adult life already and I moved back to Indonesia, yes, I saw a lot of differences. You know what I mean?
Like what?
Oh, dude. There's a lot, man.
What sticks out to your mind as like a common thing or it frequently?
It's hard, man. I got to represent my country. Like, come on. But obviously, I mean, people focus on the bad, right? There are good things, but people focus on the bad. Obviously, I think people value time differently. I think people are not as punctual. I mean, Canada's also lax, but Indonesia's really lax. People also value different things. Like, I think social media is a lot more bloated there. Not to say that it isn't here, but it's more widespread. People live through social media a lot more.
How can you explain that part?
People live online a lot more, and there's actually a reason for this. I mean, one is I think it's just different culture, right? But two is because Indonesia's very heavy on traffic, and you might think like, oh, like so what, right? When I say heavy on traffic, I mean like every day only gets worse during times, but it's always consistently bad, right? To the point where, like, if you were to go out with your friends on a weekend, you can only go to one place. Like, not by choice. Like, legit, you can only go to one place, and you just don't have time. Because it takes, like, an hour and a half to get there. You chill there, and you take an hour and a half to get somewhere else, and you chill, like, you just can't. Like, maximum maybe 2, but that's, like, if you spend the whole day with them. Right? So what ends up happening is, like, you just don't have access to go to a lot of places. People end up living in their memories, or like people end up like living online because that's how they reach out to like more things to do. Does that make sense? Right? What else was I gonna say?
Yeah, I'm curious on the time thing. What's an example of like how egregiously different is it? This
just people just
how late are they?
People just late, dude. People just late.
You guys not even set times?
Well, that's the thing though, because I mean the traffic factors into this as well, right? But like people late, 30 minutes is normal. Sorry, I was late today too, but like 30. See, I'm trying to fight back the habit because I got into it because I got home. Because I remember the first time I was back, I was like, "Yo, all right, let's meet at 1," and my friend shows up at 2, and I was like, "What the fuck?"
And you can't even get mad at them.
Yeah, exactly, and you can't even get mad at them. And now I'm getting better. Like I was 15 minutes late. My bad. got to go to the gym, Dan. Come on, you gotta support a man.
He's
trying to be fit.
Yeah, I'm in full support of that.
Trying to be fit. Let's see what else. There's a lot more. I forgot. So one of the goods, and you can take this as good or bad, but people really exist there as a unit, and I think this is like very consistent across the board for like third world versus first world. People don't really want to or are expected to live as individuals. Does that make sense? It's like as a friend, you are in a friend group. As a child, you are in a family group, and you exist as that family group, and other people perceive you as like a member of that person, as opposed to like a person. Like, does that make sense? And that translates to a lot of things. Translates to like how they talk to you. Translates to like the things that they see value in you and stuff like that. And yeah, there's more specific nuances, but I think I'm very biased, so I don't think I'm not sure if that's like a good representation.
And then, so if you took the other side when you came to Canada, what are some things like you missed?
Yeah, I think it's. Oh, okay. I forgot. There's one thing that I really miss and I really loved when I came back to Canada. So in Indonesia, you don't go outside. That's not a thing because it's polluted. It's kind of dirty. Not saying like it's like toxic, like, you know what I mean? Like, it's just not a thing people do. People don't generally go outside. Like, people are always in someone's house. Then you get into a car. Then you go somewhere else that's indoor. That's just what you do. Like, you go to a restaurant. You go to a mall. You go to watch a movie. You go to your friend's house. Like, that's what people do. Like, people are always. And part of the reason is also because it's super hot. So it's like you need air conditioning all the time, or you're like drenched all the time. So you always need to be indoors. So I really miss like being able to like, because like I said, I'm not a planner. I really miss being very nonchalant with my day, especially my off days. Like, does that make sense? Because part of the things that comes with like traffic is that you have to plan your day. Because if you don't plan your day, you can't do anything. Like, you know what I mean? Whereas here, I can like on a Saturday or whatever day, I can just walk out and like go to the park or grab some food and come back and everything's fine. So yeah, I really miss the outdoor activities. With that being said, don't confuse this with like nature. Indonesia has a lot of nature. Jakarta has a lot of nature that it's outside of the city, but it's beautiful. You can like for a weekend just go out and like visit a waterfall and like do some questionable things that maybe first world countries won't allow, like jumping into the waterfall and stuff like that. Like, you know what I mean? So it's fun, and you can like climb down the waterfall. Like, I did that. That was a lot of fun. So ups and downs, but yeah, that's one. And individuality. That's a big thing. Individuality here for me. I really appreciate it when I meet someone and they're them instead of they're a part of something.
The collective.
Yeah, collective. Don't get me wrong. Being a collective is good for a certain cause, but like I really miss having conversation with someone with a lot of individuality because I find it a lot more relatable.
Yeah, I think that's actually a common perspective people have between the difference between Western and Eastern philosophy. I don't know if the origination is from the Confucianism, but Confucius does talk heavily about the social responsibility one has, especially towards the family, etc.
I had this conversation, I forgot, with one of my friends the other day. I think it was with Andy, actually. It was like, which is better? And the answer is we don't know. Yeah. It's like I guess it depends on what your values are. Like, don't get me, like, I think if you're trying to advance humanity, I think you can make a point where like individuality actually is valuable, but also like prosperity is obviously like a big thing, and that's definitely like if you're part of a collective, that's easier, right? Like, so I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think it can get as simple with black and white as like what's better. I think the more I've learned about philosophy, it's just become that everything's 50 Shades of Grey.
Yeah, but then does that solve anything? I guess it's like makes you not ignorant, but like, don't you need to like
take a stance?
Yeah, or like the point of this is like, sorry, I guess not. That's not the point of philosophy. But like, if you wanted it to be effective, doesn't everyone need to be on board?
I think so. The way I'm thinking about it lately has been rather it's kind of you pick and choose based on situations.
Like, yes, but like in those situations, if people don't agree with you,
right? I think though this I think kind of relates to kind of Nietzsche's point of view of he had the Friedrich Nietzsche.
Okay.
So he had a point of view about I forget if it's called like the Uberman complex or something, where
Uberman
he like it's kind of the Superman.
Okay.
So he believed that certain individuals
carry the weight.
Yeah, or they have the ability and the talent. So the rest of society has to do their best to support that person instead of the collective doing well.
Who we talking about? Like Elon Musk here?
Well,
Get us to Mars, Elon.
Right. But you see, that's the thing where like I personally believe in the power of the individual, where individuals change, the unreasonable individuals tend to change the world much more so, and I think the collective eventually joins in. It's the curve, right, of the early adopters and then the early majority.
I think you're right. I think at least history tells that you're right. Right? And I also think the main reason that you're right is because there hasn't been a collective that's unanimous. Right? Like if you imagine that, obviously it's never going to happen, right? We're just living in a fantasy world here. If there's a collective that's unanimous, like communism would actually work. Right. In some ways. I mean, I'm not saying it would work. I'm just saying like it wouldn't be corrupted the way it is. Like, you know what I mean? And at the same time, like, I don't know, but I think the collective is supposed to operate at like 100% buy-in, and if that was the case, then you can make that comparison. That being said, I'm all about individuality. Disclaimer.
I think Nassim Taleb uses sizing of groups as a way of looking at different dynamics. So
got it.
I think he said,
see what you mean.
Yeah, like at the smallest circle,
got it.
You're a socialist, and then at the largest circle, you're a Democrat. That perspective. And I think that's why it might relate to like you were talking about like startups, where when you're at a small company with 10 people, a socialist mindset would work better because of the small collective compared to at like Tokopedia or Facebook.
Yeah, you have to be democratic. Unless you can just brainwash everyone, tell them what to do.
Exactly.
I like it. I like how we're switching to philosophy here. I forgot what I wanted to talk about, but I like talking about this stuff.
Yeah. No, likewise. Oh, I think you're talking about like the Also, another thing that you brought up that I resonate heavily with is also just like when you live in Southeast Asia, like Hong Kong's not technically Southeast Asia, but it's close to it, where it's so humid that your entire life is indoors.
Whatever. Yeah, sure.
Your life is indoors, right? I'm just bumping from mall to mall to mall to mall.
There's a bit of a difference though. I've been to Hong Kong. Okay, and this
no nature.
This is actually Jakarta also doesn't have nature. You have to go outside, right? But I'm talking about like the life that you live. It's really weird. Remember how I told you like Indonesia is made of locals and Chinese Indonesians, right? In Hong Kong, you don't really have that disparity. Because of that disparity in Indonesia, like the locals are the ones who kind of like chill at the streets. And that sounds horrible, but what I mean by that is like they're the ones who like, go outside and go to parks and take the public transit and stuff like that. And the Chinese Indonesians just don't. Like, I mean, call it what it is. Like, I don't want to call it racism, but like there's a difference in lifestyle if you were local or if you're Chinese Indonesian in Jakarta, and it just hasn't caught up. Like, it's getting better, but that's the simplest way I can describe it. It's just like, if you're Chinese Indonesians, you're always indoors. If you're locals, you're also indoors sometimes, but then you're also outside. It's just the two worlds haven't fully collided.
Yeah, I think my friend from the Philippines brought it up recently too, where before I get to that, my friends also used to always joke that they have Filipino time, which is always you're an hour or 2 hours late. Two things as well.
That's a thing.
Yeah, it's a thing, and so
that is legitimately a thing.
And he was telling me how I think he's kind of more on the well-off side, but he's like, I always have a driver, and you always have a bodyguard wherever you go to.
Well, I didn't have a bodyguard.
Also,
I had a driver.
Yeah.
Is he really well off? He's a bodyguard? That would probably mean he's really well off. Okay. He's a bodyguard. But it's very normal for people to have drivers and maids and stuff like that. And of course, all the drivers and maids are local. Like, you know what I mean? So it's weird because I never thought there was anything wrong with that. But then coming back as an adult, I felt uneasy. There were times that I felt very uneasy. Don't get me wrong. Like, I mean, our family, or at least my family, is like super nice to them. But it's still weird. And I don't know if I liked it.
Right. You bring up a pretty interesting concept though, because I had a maid when I lived in Hong Kong as well. And like my family treated her pretty nice, and she was actually like she started crying when we had to go to Canada because she was like, my previous boss, like apparently the previous family she was a maid
horrible with them.
She was not allowed to sit ever, and she never got to eat with them, but our maid, like, she ate with us. Like, I chatted with her a lot.
I know, man. And I don't know, man, that kind of stuff really breaks my heart. It's like I don't know, like, what can you do to change that? And I don't get me wrong, it's getting better. It really is getting better, but Yeah, I know. It's just it's hard. As a child looking at it, you see nothing wrong with it. But like as an adult coming back, it's just. I think the thing that really irks me, it's like it's as if the society is saying that they value less, right? Which is like, and you're part of it. It's horrible.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, man. I don't know, man. I don't know. Oh, okay. So one good thing is when I was home, in the Indian government, there's never been like a Chinese guy, right? This is like similar to Obama, I guess, but he didn't become president. But there was a Chinese governor, right? And he was making a lot of moves in colliding the two worlds. And this is scary. This is actually part of the reason why I moved as well. They put him in jail for 2 years.
The local.
No, the Chinese. And that's the thing. Like it's not like the way I've been describing it. It's always like, oh, the Chinese people are oppressing the local people, right? Don't get it twisted. I guess that's true because the Chinese are generally more well off, right? Obviously, they have cash, right? But the government's still full local, like 100%. Don't get me wrong. It's probably backed by Chinese businessmen, right? Or like also local businessmen, just businessmen, people with power. But an example of this is like, yeah, there was a Chinese governor who was a part of the Indonesian government, and he was making a lot of moves to call out people who were just not supporting this new world of like the two, like the locals and the Chinese people colliding, and also wanted to end corruption and stuff like that. And a lot of the higher up locals were not happy, and they put him in jail for 2 years. Wow. I mean, there's a whole controversy because they were like, oh, like he says things, and they were like, oh, he's being rude to like our Islamic culture, and like he was saying some like really horrible things about God. Like I don't know, like they were twisting his words obviously, and they put him in jail for 2 years, like literally, and that's scary, right? And as a child, that also existed. I just never knew. And as an adult, when being in that country, I was like, that is scary that they can actually do that. That's a thing, and the people are accepting of that. And it's getting better. Don't get me wrong. There's a lot of people who take a stand. They're like, no, this is not right. But there's still more people who say, okay, just say like, okay, like this is what the government says that's right. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's scary. It's very scary.
Yeah, I think there was a time when Koreans actually had a travel ban to Philippines because that was kind of the case where a lot of Koreans had immigrated to the Philippines, but they were the wealthy, and so they were not very nice. They were kind of a little oppressive.
Yeah.
And then there was a hit out on people who were of Korean nationality, and so then a lot ended up getting kidnapped and murdered constantly.
Dude.
And so there was a ban
that's the
on
thing.
a national level.
That's the thing, right? Like, don't get me wrong. I don't think you're safe. You're fully safe anywhere, but like, hey, Canada's peace, man.
Awesome.
I know Canada's. I mean, I never appreciated it, but coming back here, I'm like, hey, people are like. Sometimes you get a dude who's a little mean in the subway, but whatever. Other than that, they're pretty chill. No one's gonna kidnap me here.
No,
like you know what I mean. No one's gonna overthrow a government here. Like, oh, well, maybe I don't think so.
But even when I go to developed countries, or developed cities, like I was counting the other week, and I've been to something like 68, 69 cities.
We get it, Dan. And you go to a lot of cities.
Yeah,
okay?
I travel a lot. And
stop flexing, man.
But what I learned, what I always like realize is I always start being very grateful for Toronto. Like it's actually a very nice city.
Yeah, man, it is.
I actually feel very safe at night compared to like other cities. Even when I go back to Seoul, sometimes I feel safer in Toronto.
Yeah, I think Toronto is definitely not the most colorful city in the world, but it is colorful. It's actually very colorful, and it's that balance of like it's colorful, it's fun, but at the same time it's also very secure. And I mean, you can't complain, man. At this point, you're complaining about first world problems, and I think that's a good position to be in.
All the time, yeah. And we have a guy here from the third world telling me about that.
Yeah, so. I mean, hey, dude, it's true. I mean, I'm not like third world, obviously,
right?
But I don't know.
Developing nation.
And actually, one thing I just remember what I wanted to talk about when we were talking about philosophy. I like have this belief and this stand that like everybody just needs empathy. I think that empathy will solve a lot of issues.
I agree.
Yeah, I just think like people need to spend more time thinking about how other people feel. Obviously, like it's a little bit exaggerated in this day and age in some contexts, but I think like true empathy is just like the best solution. And at that point, you don't have to be a collective. You don't have to always agree, right? But if you understand their perspective and you understand their pain, then it just leads to more peace.
Yeah, there's an essay that I was working on. It's not published yet, but it's one of the ones I'm working on.
Okay.
And
seen forever.
I wrote one every week. So
Jesus damn.
I think my folder has like something like 200 ideas right now.
God damn,
But
good for you.
One is it's the idea that one requires curiosity to actually develop empathy, because empathy comes from understanding, and then you need to be curious to understand.
That is actually, that sounds really correct. Damn.
Thanks.
I didn't think about that. I always thought, I guess you need curiosity because you're trying to understand something that you innately don't understand. That's the point of empathy.
Right.
Damn, that is a good point. Yeah, man, that's true.
All right, I think for my benefit, I think we're gonna end it off here so that I sound pretty wise, and we'll.
So you sound pretty wise.
But
well played,
dude. Hans, this was a really fun chat, and I actually liked doing this second segment. Maybe I'll do a little more and see if this turns into a second podcast.
I mean, hey, listen. I don't know which part sounded more interesting. It felt like the second part felt more interesting, but the first part's informative too, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dude, man, thanks so much for coming to the podcast.
Absolutely.
Learned a lot about you today.
Yeah, you did. A little too much, maybe.
That's right. All right, man. Have a good one, and thanks for coming on the podcast.
Thanks, dude.
All right, thank you for listening to the podcast. I hope the story was inspiring to you. Hopefully it also helped you expand your perspectives. Hopefully it also made you question the default path that you might have been going on, or the default beliefs you might have had. And maybe now it'll make you even think about doing something about it, doing something different, maybe challenging yourself, being courageous. Who knows? But regardless, I'm really happy that you took some time out of your day to listen to this fantastic story with my guest. And if you would like to somehow, in some way, contribute and help support the podcast, and maybe even just be part of the community that I'm trying to build with the greater OMD Ventures platform, really think about being a stakeholder in the platform. And the quick way to do that is to go to my website, oldmandan.com, and go to the stakeholders page. I believe it's oldmandan.com/stakeholder. And the link is also down below. And that's how you can figure out how you can subscribe, follow to get more updates on the free content. But at the same time, also donate. And donate by actually just buying me a coffee. That's just how I put it. And you can buy me a coffee a month, coffee a week, or coffee every day of the year. And think about it as the way that, if you wanted to chat with me, you might just bring me out for coffee and buy me a coffee. Or if you wanted to bring one of my guests out to chat, you might buy them a coffee. So just think of it as I'm the service that's doing that for you, so you can just pay me in coffees. Don't worry, everything will still be free. It would just really help if you would like to show your support this way, so that I can use the coffee money to buy myself actual coffees, and also to buy my guests actual coffees, and use the leftover money to actually grow the platform, as well as even keep it operationally alive as well, because all this isn't really free, and it does take a lot of time to build it as well as operate it, and hopefully grow it further. So your support would be amazing if you would like to contribute. And so just check out the website, go to the stakeholders page, and read the different kind of benefits you might even get as a stakeholder. All right, thank you.